It started with 2 dirty martinis and a cab ride. And it ended with 41,000 complaints, a live television walkout, a lost job, and one of the most sustained and bitter feuds in the history of British media. The story of Piers Morgan and Meghan Markle is not a story about journalism or celebrity gossip or royal politics. At its core, it is a story about one man who felt used, humiliated, and discarded, and who decided, with every tool available to him, that he would never let the world forget it. Tonight, we are telling the full verified story of how a casual evening drink in a Kensington pub in 2016 became a 5-year public war. How a woman who said nothing destroyed the career of a man who could not stop talking. How Piers Morgan lost everything he built at ITV in the space of 24 hours. And how, somehow, losing it made him more powerful than he had ever been. This is not tabloid fabrication. Every single moment in tonight's investigation is confirmed, sourced, and documented. This is Royal Report Daily. And tonight, we are taking you inside one of the most extraordinary personal feuds in modern British public life. Welcome to Royal Report Daily, your #1 destination for real royal news, verified investigations, and the stories the palace doesn't want you to find. I'm your host. And if you are new here, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell, because what we cover on this channel, you will not find anywhere else. Every single week, we go deeper, we go further, and we go to places the mainstream media is too afraid to touch. Tonight is one of those nights. Let's get into it. Let us go back to the very beginning. Because the beginning of the story is remarkably ordinary for something that ended so extraordinarily. In 2015, Piers Morgan and Meghan Markle began following each other on Twitter. At the time, Meghan was a working actress, well known in North America for her role as Rachel Zane on the legal drama Suits, but not yet a global name. Piers was already one of Britain's most recognizable media figures, a former tabloid editor, a former CNN host, a man who had built a career on his opinions and his willingness to say things other people would not. They began exchanging messages, a friendly professional connection between two media-savvy public figures. Then, in the spring of 2016, Meghan came to London. She was visiting partly for Wimbledon, where she watched matches with her close friend Serena Williams. And she met Piers Morgan in person at a bar in Kensington. Piers has described this evening multiple times in multiple interviews, with a consistency that suggests it genuinely mattered to him. He told Ryan Tubridy on RT's The Late Late Show, and these are his exact words, "We spent 2 hours in a pub. She had a couple of dirty martinis. I had a couple of pints. We got on brilliantly." He described the conversation as easy and warm, a genuine connection. And then, at the end of the evening, he put her in a cab. He told The Late Late Show what happened next with the kind of timing that suggests he has told this story many times. He said it turned out to be a cab which took her to a party where she met Prince Harry. And the next night they had a solo dinner together, and that was the last I heard from Meghan Markle. He paused. "She ghosted me, Ryan. Meghan Markle ghosted me." That sentence became one of the most quoted lines in this entire story. Not because ghosting is unusual. People are ghosted every day. But because of what it triggered in Piers Morgan, a man who, by his own account, believed he may have been the person who inadvertently put Meghan in the cab that took her toward the most significant relationship of her life, and received nothing in return. Not a message. Not a thank you. Not an acknowledgement. Just silence. If you want to understand why this feud became what it became, subscribe to Royal Report Daily right now. Because what comes next explains everything. For 2 years after that evening in the pub, Piers watched in silence as Meghan's life transformed completely. The relationship with Harry became public. The engagement was announced. The royal wedding date was set. And in May 2018, the day before Meghan married Prince Harry at Windsor Castle, Piers posted on Instagram. He wrote, "2 years ago, I took Meghan Markle to my local pub for a drink. And then she ghosted me." He described feeling genuinely hurt. He had spoken about her to colleagues and friends. He had considered the evening a meaningful connection. And she had moved on as if it had never happened. The rap, analyzing the psychology of Morgan's subsequent campaign against Meghan, noted that he appeared particularly stung because in his mind he may have been responsible for putting her in the car that would take her to meet her future husband. And she had not even acknowledged that. Morgan had also said publicly, and these words are documented, "We have now seen dozens of other people say they too got ghosted. We all got frozen out." She had reached a loftier place, and there was no room for people like us. That phrase, "people like us," tells you everything about how Piers processed what happened. It was not just personal rejection. It was a statement about status, about who mattered and who did not, about a woman who climbed and then closed the door behind her. And Piers Morgan, who had spent his entire career refusing to be dismissed by anyone, was not going to let a closed door stay closed. Like this video right now if this story is showing you something about Piers Morgan and Meghan that most people have never fully understood. And subscribe to Royal Report Daily, because what comes next is where this personal grievance became a national story. From 2018 onward, Piers Morgan made his opinions about Meghan Markle a consistent feature of his public work. He questioned her motives. He criticized her statements. He challenged the narrative she and Harry presented to the world. Some of his commentary was legitimate journalistic skepticism. Some of it crossed the line into what his critics described as an obsessive personal campaign. But for 3 years, it remained within the boundaries of the media's normal rough and tumble. Then came March 7, 2021. Oprah Winfrey. The interview that changed everything. Meghan and Harry sat down with Oprah for a 2-hour conversation that aired on CBS. Inside that interview, Meghan said something that stopped the world. She said that during her pregnancy with Archie, the isolation and institutional failure she experienced became so severe that she had suicidal thoughts. She said she had reached out to the royal institution for help and been told there was nothing they could do because she was not a paid employee. She said she had felt so alone that she contemplated not wanting to be alive anymore. These were devastating words. For millions of people who had struggled with mental health, they were words of recognition and solidarity. For the palace, they were a crisis. And for Piers Morgan, sitting in the Good Morning Britain studio the next morning, they were an invitation to say what he had been thinking for years. On March 8, 2021, with the Oprah interview dominating every conversation in Britain and across the world, Piers Morgan looked into the camera on Good Morning Britain and said, "I'm sorry, I don't believe a word she says. Meghan Markle. I wouldn't believe her if she read me a weather report." He elaborated. He questioned the credibility of everything she had said. He dismissed her account of suicidal thoughts. He challenged her version of events from beginning to end. And then something happened in that same broadcast that pushed everything further than even Piers had anticipated. His co-presenter Alex Beresford challenged him directly, on air, about his comments regarding Meghan's mental health. The exchange became tense. And Piers Morgan, one of British television's most experienced live performers, stood up, removed his microphone, and walked off the set. Live. On national television. In front of hundreds of thousands of morning viewers. Do not go anywhere. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily and turn on notifications, because what happened in the 24 hours that followed is where this story reaches its most extraordinary point. The walkout was extraordinary. But what happened next was even more significant. Because while Piers was still walking off the set of Good Morning Britain, something else was already in motion. Meghan Markle formally filed a complaint with ITV. The Guardian and The Telegraph both confirmed that a formal complaint had been lodged with ITV on behalf of the Duchess of Sussex. The complaint, reported by ITV News royal editor Chris Shipp, focused not on the personal attacks, but on the impact of Morgan's words on people dealing with mental health issues, specifically. What his dismissal of Meghan's suicidal thoughts might do to others who were also struggling and watching. Meghan raised concerns about how Morgan's words affect the issue of mental health and what it might do to others contemplating suicide. That framing was careful and strategic. Rather than making it about herself, she made it about the broader harm. ITV was now in an impossible position. It could not be seen to allow a presenter to dismiss a woman's account of suicidal thoughts on the same network that ran mental health campaigns. ITV CEO Carolyn McCall said the broadcaster would hold talks with Meghan. By March 9, 2021, one day after the walkout, the announcement came. Following discussions with ITV, Piers Morgan has decided now is the time to leave Good Morning Britain. The most complained about broadcast moment in Ofcom's history, 41,000 complaints in a single day, had ended one of the most prominent careers in British television. And at the center of it all, saying nothing publicly, was Meghan Markle. The contrast was almost theatrical. Piers had spent years being loud about her. And in his most consequential moment, she had responded with a complaint and a silence that was more effective than any public statement could have been. Now let us talk about what happened after. Because Piers Morgan's story did not end with his ITV exit. And this is actually one of the most interesting parts of the entire story. Because in losing his job, Piers Morgan became something he had never quite been before. A martyr for free speech. He posted on Instagram the day after his departure with words that became one of the most shared statements of 2021. He wrote, "On Monday, I said I didn't believe Meghan Markle in her Oprah interview. I've had time to reflect on this opinion, and I still don't. Freedom of speech is a hill I'm happy to die on." The reaction divided perfectly along the already existing fault lines of the Meghan debate. People who believed Meghan saw Morgan's departure as justice. People who were skeptical of her account saw it as the suppression of legitimate opinion. Ofcom investigated the episode and issued its ruling in September 2021. The verdict was remarkable in its own right. Ofcom ruled that while Morgan's comments had the potential to be harmful, they were sufficiently challenged during the program to provide adequate protection to viewers. Morgan declared it a resounding victory for free speech and a resounding defeat for what he called Princess Pinocchios. He returned to television in 2022 with his own show, Piers Morgan, and censored on Talk TV. And in a moment of theatrical irony that captured the entire dynamic of this feud, he accepted the Television and Radio Industries Club Award for Interview of the Year in 2023 and used his acceptance speech to thank Meghan Markle. He said, "I want to thank Meghan Markle because, if you think about it, without her contribution to my career, I would never have gone to Talk TV. I would never have been standing here with this award." The woman who had got him fired had also made him more famous than he had ever been. Let us zoom out and look at this story honestly from both sides. Because the truth of what happened here is more complicated than either side's narrative. Piers Morgan has been a legitimate journalistic voice on some aspects of the Sussex story. His skepticism about certain claims made in the Oprah interview, specifically some of the palace accusations that were subsequently disputed, was not entirely without basis. His criticism of the royal family's handling of Meghan's situation, which he also expressed at times, showed that his view was more nuanced than pure hostility. But his personal campaign against Meghan has also, at times, gone well beyond journalism. The obsessive quality of it, the years of sustained criticism, the willingness to make her the centerpiece of his professional identity, the repeated references to being ghosted that continued for years after the event, spoke to something more personal than public interest. The Wrap described it plainly. Morgan seemed particularly hurt by Markle's ghosting because in his mind, he may have been responsible for putting her in the car that would take her to meet her future husband. That is a very human kind of pain. And human pain, when it is not processed privately, tends to express itself in exactly the way Piers Morgan expressed his. Loudly, publicly, for years. And Meghan. Her silence throughout this entire story has been its own kind of statement. She did not engage. She did not respond to individual attacks. She filed one formal complaint at the moment of maximum impact and then said nothing. That strategy, silence as a weapon, was either remarkably disciplined or remarkably cold, depending on how you view it. Both things can be true simultaneously. What is undeniably true is that it worked. Piers Morgan, one of the most powerful media figures in Britain, lost his most prominent job. And Meghan Markle, whose account of suicidal thoughts he publicly dismissed, watched it happen from California without saying a word. Here is what the full story of Piers Morgan and Meghan Markle actually tells us. It tells us that personal grievance, however small, however human, can shape enormous public events when the person carrying it has a microphone and a national audience. It tells us that the most effective response to sustained public attack is sometimes not to respond at all. It tells us that in the world of British media, the line between journalism and vendetta is thin and frequently crossed. And it tells us something about power, about who has it and how it is used. Piers Morgan had the platform, the audience, the years of professional credibility, the ability to reach millions of people every morning with his voice. Meghan Markle had, in that critical moment in March 2021, the institutional leverage of ITV's own brand values and a formal complaint about mental health. He used his power loudly. She used hers quietly. And the quiet one won. That is not the end of the story. Piers Morgan is still on television. He is still talking about Meghan Markle with a consistency that suggests the wound from that cab ride in 2016 has never fully healed. And Meghan is still in California, still building her brand, still occasionally mentioned by Piers, still, as far as anyone can tell, not paying attention. Which may be the most infuriating thing of all. For a man who wants more than anything to be heard by the woman who stopped listening. This is Royal Report Daily. And this story, like all the best ones, refuses to end. That is all for tonight's investigation on Royal Report Daily. If this video made you think, made you feel, or made you see this story differently, hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second and it means everything to this channel. Subscribe if you have not already, and turn on notifications because we post new investigations every week and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Share this video with one person who follows the royal story, because the more people who know the real truth, the better. I'm your host. This has been Royal Report Daily. Stay informed, stay royal, and I will see you in the next one. 2 dirty martinis, 1 cab ride, 5 years of war. Subscribe to Royal Report Daily and be here for the next chapter.